Hello, and thank you for your interest in Technology Transfer Day in 2020. As kind of an overview of what is Technology Transfer Day, there are events like these that occur across the country. So it's kind of a loosely organized network of events that bring together technology scouts representing different aspects of the Department of Defense. And what they're looking for is they're looking for innovative concepts, so things that are at even a pretty early stage of development, as well as products that are farther along down the development pipeline. And it's an opportunity, these events that occur across the country, for entrepreneurs, innovators, researchers, anyone with kind of a new product idea that might benefit the end users who work within the Department of Defense, and help them with their operational goals, are encouraged to then come and kind of have these meetings. So we had one event last year. It was called Encountering Innovation, Omaha. So we've gone through a little bit of a branding change and called it Technology Transfer Day. And what happened last year was that we had two technology scouts who were there to listen to the pitches. 16 different companies pitched. And it turned into, well, all of them received direct feedback from the technology scouts as their pitches were happening. But there were actual 4 engagements that occurred afterward, where information was socialized and contracts were pursued, and SBIRs and things like that occurred in the following months after that event took place. So how 2020 will work is in September. There will be pitches that are available either for companies that are much earlier, in an earlier stage. Those are going to be more of a poster session. If you're a researcher, you're more familiar with that setup. And then there will actually be pitches with pitch decks and things like that, and an opportunity to share your slide and actually have time for more discussion and back and forth, and that will be on a different day. So just know that we're kind of organizing it in that way, with the poster session that's bolded there. Those are for technology readiness levels that are earlier. Tracy will share later some tools so that you can kind of help figure out what your technology readiness level is. And then for those products that are further stage of development, then those are TRLs of 6+, and those will be who's eligible for an actual pitch opportunity. So in terms of how to prepare for these engagements, there's an application that's available, online now, that you can complete. And the idea there is that it will automatically generate the documents that you're going to share, or that the technology scouts will share. So it's not just about creating some documents and just for the sake of the technology scouts, but they're in a format for when they're shared with higher ups within the Department of Defense. They're in a format that they prefer to consume. So that's where you complete our application, and then it will automatically generate these documents, and you'll get kind of an early version of those. And then through the training events, we will then finalize those documents, and then also practice the presentation of those documents, just to make sure that you hit all of the critical points. And the results of the actual events, the days that you attend those, will be direct feedback from the scouts as you're presenting, as you're sharing your poster, as you're doing the pitch, and then also socialization with their federal contacts within the appropriate combatant command, and with someone who can actually do something with the information that they've provided. So the documents that will be automatically generated is an information paper, or BLUF, which is bottom line up front. So that's the first document. Our system isn't sophisticated enough to insert graphics in there, but just know that it'll kind of pop these things together. So the best information that you can provide in that application will then appear in the bottom line up front, that then goes into the information paper. And again, that's just a 1-page document that's just summarizing what it is you're trying to, excuse me, it's a 2-page document that's basically just summarizing what it is you're providing, and what it is you have on offer, and where you think it fits within the Department of Defense, and your technology readiness level, like I mentioned before. The next is the quad chart, and that is a 1-page document, and it's basically distilling all of the information that's in the information paper and the bluff and putting it into a 1-page format, that really just goes over the technology itself, how it applies to the Department of Defense, past performance and of the technology in the company, and then kind of what the value is and what your ask is, what it is, the reason for this meeting, what you need to pursue this further. And then the last one that all participants need to put together is then a poster. And so that's seen there on the screen as well. And if you've provided or made a poster in the past, if you're participated in a research fair or something, it's similar to that, except for that you'll see on the left and the right rails that's really where you're describing the technology and maybe your research history. But the middle part is really what the focus is, and the bigger part there is the relevance to the Department of Defense, how far along in the development your technology is, how mature or scalable the technology is, and again, what your ask is. What do you need to really make it so that the Department of Defense can use it? So what do you need to further develop that idea into a commercializable, or in this case, kind of deployable product? And then the last thing that we will help with and provide guidelines for, but it's really only something that the people who are pitching need to present, and that's the actual pitch deck. So there are some kind of guidelines and standards that need to be adhered to, so that you cover all of the information that the Tech Scouts would be interested in. But again, that's another session that we'll have as well. And so those are the standard documents that the Tech Scouts are all going to be asking for and want to see, so that they can socialize those further with other groups. So in terms of who are the sponsoring organizations of Technology Transfer Day and these training events, my name is Josh Nickelcaddy. I probably should have introduced myself earlier. I represent the Technology and Innovation Group within the Nebraska Business Development Center. And what we do is provide services that are prepaid through the Small Business Administration, as well as the Defense Logistics Agency are our grantors, and to just help companies commercialize their and bring their innovations to market. So commercialize new ideas, build those out, figure out how they could work, what's the market feasibility of those ideas, and then actually make them and build them and get them to a scale where they actually appear in the marketplace. So that's our big push. Another thing that we do, and that's through our funding with the Defense Logistics Agency, is work with the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And they're the ones, the experts in terms of making sure you have the registrations done, certifications, and all of those kinds of things, so that you can actually receive a contract with, and deliver on a contract with the federal government or state or local governments. But in this case, we're really talking about federal government contracting opportunities. And so those are the experts there who help you navigate that process. Now I'm going to turn it over to the other co-host on this, which is the National Strategic Research Institute, and Tracy Hancock is who's representing that group. So take it away, Tracy.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Again, thanks to everybody who's interested in participating in this event. Josh and I look forward to meeting you in person and helping you prepare. For those of you who are not aware of the National Strategic Research Institute, or NSRI, we are what's called a University Affiliated Research Center. We're one of 14 UARCs across the country. We are partnered with the University of Nebraska. That is a standard practice for all UARCs. They are affiliated with a university somewhere. Some of the more famous UARCs would be GTRI, the Georgia Tech Research Institute, or the Research Institute at Johns Hopkins. We have our federal sponsor is US Stratcom, And our mission is to support research focused on the complex security requirements around weapons of mass destruction. Some of the areas that we work in include chemical and biological threat detection and countermeasures, nuclear deterrence, active and passive defense against weapons of mass destruction, consequence management, which is basically to protect, respond, and rebuild infrastructure after an incident occurs. And then mission-related research, which is sort of a broad bucket that allows NSRI and our faculty partners across the university to address questions of import across the Department of Defense. So one of the reasons that we're involved with Technology Transfer Day and partnering with NBDC is because of our the daily work that we do with the Department of Defense and other federal agencies tied to national security. And it's our hope that our perspective and expertise in this area will help all of you better understand how to work with the Department of Defense. So let's talk a little bit about what it is like to work with the DoD. It is a bit different than working with other federal agencies, grant sponsoring agencies. There are some things that Josh and I have learned over the course of working with these technology scouts and the different events across the country. We would like for you, instead of thinking about your technology specifically, the solution that you have developed that you want to share with the Department of Defense, to take a step back from that and really think about what problem does your technology solve for the warfighter, right? How does the Department of Defense currently handle this problem? Why is your solution better than their current methods? And what value does your solution bring to the DoD or the end user, either that is undersatisfied or not satisfied at all? It's important for you to think about your innovation in this term, because this is how the technology scouts and your customers are going to be thinking about that. And we want you to be able to address questions in your presentation and in your documents before they even get asked. Something else that we want to talk about is identifying your potential customer within the DoD. The Department of Defense is a huge organization and in and of itself is not your customer, but there will be an agency or another organization within the DoD that would be your customer, and we need to do our best to help you hone in on exactly who that is going to be. There are a couple of resources that we use to do that. One is the Department of Defense identified communities of interest, which we'll get into here in a little bit, and then the Combatant Commands, which have put together a 3-page document outlining their capability needs. And we will go through that later as well and make both of those resources available to you. The next thing we want you to do is familiarize yourself with that customer and try to understand their operational environment, any requirements that they may or may not have for solutions that they are planning to use. What is their culture like? How do you talk to them? What resonates with them? And then understanding their procurement or contracting processes. These are all things that we would like you to at least put some thought into, to try to be aware of, understanding that the DoD is pretty opaque and some of this information may not be easily available. In addition to those, we want you to consider customizing your pitch and your documents to that specific organization that you will eventually identify, even though we know that many solutions are applicable to a much broader group. We do want you to focus for this event on a specific customer. The tech scouts that will be there are incredibly savvy and knowledgeable and will be able to see and understand how your technology solution could be applied to other areas, and they will make sure that when they do socialize your information, that they are reaching out to customers that you may not have thought of in the first place. The other thing that I have heard, and I think Josh has heard as well, it's important for these tech scouts to feel that as presenters and as people that are looking to the Department of Defense to be a customer, that you've done a little bit of your customer research and you aren't just offering a solution and expecting them to figure out where that solution fits. Consider how and by whom your innovation is going to be deployed or used. This is basically who's your end user and where is that end user going to be located when they're using your solution. And thinking about it in terms of not just where they are, but where does it fit into their current workflow? Does using your solution disrupt that workflow in some way? Does it save them time? Does it add time? Does it add complexity? Really thinking about how the use of your innovation is going to affect and impact that end user and their ability to do the job that they're setting out to do. Does your innovation operate in the areas in which the end user is going to be located? If they're out in a field somewhere in hot and dry climates, does that affect the ability of your innovation to work? If they're in the Arctic, if they're on a ship, these are the sorts of things that you should consider and think about in terms of who you identify as your customer. Regarding the materials, this goes into questions about how does that solution, your innovation, get to where it needs to be used? So for instance, if a soldier has to carry that solution with them in their pack, is it rugged enough? How much does it weigh? Is it going to hinder that soldier's ability to work in closed environments if they have their backpack on? All of those sorts of things will come into consideration and will certainly pop into the minds of the tech scouts as you give your presentation. Finally, developing a high-level understanding of how that your innovation might operate over the course of its entire life cycle. So oftentimes innovators think about initial and first and primary use cases for their innovation, which is obviously important. But the piece to think about in this scenario is, again, if this is a solution that's going to be deployed somewhere, what does that look like? Does the end user need to be trained? If so, when does that training take place? How long does that training take place? Will that training need to occur more than one time? How does your innovation or your solution get stored or carried to its final destination of use? What does the maintenance cycle look like? Will the end users require special equipment or replacement materials in order to keep using your solution as it's intended to be used? And then repairs, how are those handled? Will they have to send it back somewhere? Will they be able to handle repairs on site? What's going to be required for them to do those things? All of these things are important for you to think about because, again, these are the sorts of things that the technology scouts and the customers that they're going to put you in touch with are going to be thinking about as well. So we just want to make sure that you are prepared. We do have other considerations that we will bring up during the course of our follow-on workshops, but those are just sort of the place we'd like for you guys to start. So now let's go into identifying a customer. This is an area where I think Josh and I and our colleagues and peers at NBDC and NSRI wish we could, hear a brief pitch on your product and automatically tell you exactly where you're going and who you need to be working with. But unfortunately, that's simply not the case. You guys are the experts on your solutions. You have a better understanding of who's going to be using it and why. And so this is an area where we're going to ask you to put a lot of thought and effort into. We will offer you support and feedback to the best of our ability. And obviously we're going to introduce a couple of resources to you as well. The first resource is called the Communities of Interest. You can find the Department of Defense Communities of Interest on a website called the Defense Innovation Marketplace, which is the address of which is located here at the bottom of this slide. When you get to this website, across the top, there will be a menu and there will be a clearly marked category of communities of interest. What these are excuse me, these are technology categories that have a broad or multiple use across DoD agencies and even other federal agencies that will help you better identify the technology space under which your particular solution fits. This identification is going to be important to you as you work on your information paper, your quad chart, and your poster. So I highly suggest looking at these communities of interest when you have time. When you finally get to this communities of interest page, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see all of these different communities of interest laid out for you. It may take you a couple of times to figure out exactly where you fit, but all you will need to do is click on the pictures here next to the words, and it will take you to a further breakdown with subcategories, greater descriptions, and potentially additional resources for you to explore as you identify which technology space your solution best fits into. Next, we have the Combatant Commands, which are potential customers for you. So I think it's important for you to learn as much as you can about these Combatant Commands. Each one of these has a website you can go in and dig around on as well. And I would suggest doing that once you've identified which one may be a potential partner for you. This is the Combatant Commands Common Capabilities Needs Chart. This is a 3-page document. It is built into this presentation, so I'll go through these with you a bit, but it will also be available for you on our website. What we like about this layout is that on the far left side, you can see several high-level and broad categories that are then further broken down into subcategories. So for instance, under the force protection and medical roll-up category, a subcategory is medical. And as you look across the width of this chart, you can see that each box is filled. That means that each of these 9 combatant commands that are listed above have an interest in a technology or solutions that fall under this category and subcategory. So for instance, EUCOM, European Command, has an interest in rapid response to pandemic influenza/infectious disease occurrences. So you can imagine that EUCOM may have an interest in any of the new solutions that have been developed over the last several months in response to COVID-19. So if any of you have something in that space, you may want to consider looking at EUCOM as a potential customer to use for your Technology Transfer Days presentations. Additionally, sorry, I clicked the wrong button. If you go down here and you look at TRANSCOM, which is Transportation Command, they also have an interest in the medical space, but it's from a slightly different perspective. It's with regard to the decontamination of transportation assets. How do they screen cargo for smuggled goods, explosives, chem bio threats, etc.? And how can they enhance aircraft survivability? So as you can see, the category of medical is pretty broad, but this document does a nice job of giving you some insights into who your potential customers might be depending on where you fall within the categories. So again, this is a 3-page document. It'll be available to you on the website, and we will also be happy to help you through this once you've identified a couple of potential partners. Down here at the bottom, you can see this particular document is also available on the Defense Technical Information Center, the DTIC webpage, which is www.dtic.mil. So identifying your technology readiness level, or TRL. Josh mentioned this earlier. This is how we are going to determine for this event whether you will be giving a poster presentation or whether you will be giving a full pitch. Our tech scouts like to have the understanding of where you are in the TRL space. So as they're listening to you describe your solution and describe what it can and can't do, they have an understanding of where you truly are in the process and who in their network is going to be a good fit for you based on where you currently stand. So a technology readiness level is a method of measuring the maturity of an innovation. It was developed by NASA in the 1970s and adopted across the DoD in the early 2000s. The NASA comptroller, Werner Gruhl, decided that, as they were doing R&D development, they were seeing costs and time increase based on the unpredictability of where they were in the R&D process. So the TRL was basically developed as a risk mitigation tool, right? And they use it to, one, across the DoD as a common understanding of technology status, which is very important. Risk management, again, also important. How long is this really going to take? How are we going to manage the time and the money that our organization is going to need to put into this in order to get this ready for final deployment? This TRL is used, again, to make decisions concerning funding and also to make decisions regarding transition of technology. This is the basic TRL scale. It goes from 1 to 9. You can see here it starts with basic principles observed, right? There's not even an idea really in mind. You've just started noticing some things in your research processes and think, oh, maybe there might be something there. And you start moving on from there. You develop your concept, you do some basic experiments, you do some validation in the lab. You move on to validation of your hypotheses in a relevant environment, and then on to the development of a model or prototype demonstration in a relevant environment. You then take that prototype and you move it into an operational environment, and then you put it into you've built the system completely, you've qualified it, and then finally, the final category, TRL 9, is you have proven it through an actual mission operation. On the web page, you will notice that there is a spreadsheet called the NYSERDA spreadsheet. This is a spreadsheet that was developed by an organization in New York State that helps companies and individuals and innovators identify their TRL through a series of 7 questions. We feel at NSRI and NBDC that this provides a fairly accurate analysis of what you have, and therefore we've made it available for you to use to help you establish your current TRL. I do want to emphasize that there are no bad TRLs. It is simply a designation of where you sit in your process. And again, it will help the tech scouts better understand the types of resources that you will need in order to get your solution to a deployable state and match that with folks in their network that are best suited to help you get there. So once you're finished going through this presentation and have decided you would like to apply for this event, I highly suggest you go in and you complete your New York NYSERDA spreadsheet, at the end of which you will see here there's a technology readiness level that will pop out, and you can use that for your application and other documents for this event. Some final thoughts about this. Again, Josh and I really want to make sure to emphasize that talking about how your innovation, your solution is going to add or provide greater capability to the end user, the warfighter, is incredibly important. Always keep in mind the value that you can bring to the organization. Hopefully, you can deliver something faster or more cost effective or enhance current processes, but talking about it again from the perspective of the end user and your customer is incredibly important. That falls into, again, you got to do your homework then about that customer and do your best to understand the types of situations your customer faces and their environments, their final missions, and how your solution fits into that. Tailor your pitch, again, to one customer for this event, understanding that it may be applicable to a much broader audience. Again, the tech scouts are savvy. They will see the value of your solution more broadly than you're presenting. The dialing in on a single customer is just going to help you hone your message and develop documents that are useful to the Tech Scouts and their socialization network after this event. And again, while many of us assume that when we're pitch, it's going to be similar to what Josh and I are doing. You just get to flip through your slides and talk on and on with no interruptions. I just want to make you all aware that if you plan on participating in this event, and I highly encourage you all to do this, the Tech Scouts don't wait for you to finish your presentation before lobbing questions at you. It does end up becoming much more of a dialogue just by the nature of the audience. And so we want to prepare you for that and you know, have you take that into consideration as you do develop your final pitch or poster presentation. Finally, if any of you have questions, please reach out to Josh or I. These are our emails. Catherine is available to answer questions about follow-on events that we're going to be holding. Oops, in addition to, I must have accidentally skipped over a slide here. Sorry about that. Speaking of those events, we have these, after you complete your application, which is due to us by July 24th, and can be accessed at that link on the slide there. There are several events following that will help you complete and finalize the documents that Josh shared with you earlier. The benefit of this application, again, is really not that it's an application, but that it allows you to put your information into a single source, which will then populate the quad chart, the information paper, the poster, which then you only need to go in and refine. So it really saves time on the back end, and I highly encourage you to take the time on the front end in that application so that you can ensure consistency across the documents based on what is put into your application. So again, I'll go back to, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and I look forward to hearing from you. Josh, any final words?
No, other than that, I hope to see the people who are interested in this event really, you know, kind of follow through and participate in the upcoming events that really are very helpful and designed to ensure that they have a good outcome when they actually attend the event themselves. So to have robust conversations and really know, you know, the customer that they intend to serve, and you know what, and everyone's on the same page at those pitch sessions to really have a good discussion about moving that technology forward. So it's a great opportunity, as Tracy's mentioned, and I hope everyone on the call or, you know, here takes full advantage of it.
Thank you.